Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series There Is No Epic Lucha, Only Puns. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 174, Gone Home. Lim felt like a scary tree lady was going to tear him apart if he wasn't amusing enough. She was worse than the pig knight who told him to eat more protein, or the goblin bar owner who gave him a juice box and told him to get out. "I don't have time to play with you little pumpkins today," the tree woman called Wyam said out with a sigh. "Why not?" Dio asked curiously, and Lim wanted to shake him a little. She was going to let them pass without issue. Why was he questioning it? "Your faces bother me," Wyam said breezily, as she swept a branch across her face with a motion like she was pinching her nose. Dio nodded seriously, as if this was a grave problem, before he yanked his shirt over his head, obscuring his face, and gave a thumbs up. "Sorted, we'll get moving," he said, and walked off course as he headed towards a wall. Poppy caught up and guided Dio away towards the exit, but not before shooting Wyam a narrowed look that said she didn't believe Wyam's reasons at all. Lim crept along the wall, trying to be smaller than a bug, but Wyam turned to him regardless, stopping him from leaving the room after Dio and Poppy with the branches. "Advice for you. Find new employment before this year is up. I suspect stocks in your company will be sharply declining," she said with a tone colder than any winter. It was like some divine verdict, but she was just a tree, right? He gathered what courage he had, something like his brother might have had if he was here today. "My loyalty is with Captain Utina. Where she ends up is where I will go," he said firmly. "Broken scientist now comes with squishy little sidekick," Wyam mused, and then smirked. "The toy stores will be sold out before the day is up," she said, and Lim grabbed his bow despite being pinned. "Don't call her that. She's smart and she knows a lot of things," he protested. Wyam pulled him close, her giant face making him feel so very small. "Cling to that fire, because she won't defend herself. Every sun needs a moon," she said, then dropped him as if bored. "Who's your son?" Lim retorted, and he was surprised when Lime went quiet. "Sad little boy. I was someone's son once upon a time," she said slowly, then closed her amber eyes. "Now, where there was a flickering innocence lies a cold bitter ashes of experience," she said, then nearly threw him out the room. Her words haunted him as he quickly chased after Dio and Poppy down to the 3rd floor, beating the man almost becoming far too thick for him. The Yggdrasil opened its fleshy bulbous eye as its connection to Beta seemed to stutter and then vanish. Deep within the trunk of the massive tree, his core engorged itself on the hollow shell of a divine woman. The goddess that once resided here was now worm food for his growing ambitions. The loss of Beta was not as dire as it seemed. He had seen the girl regenerate from some truly terrible wounds. She would come crawling back soon enough. His flesh inside her form would ensure it. He shuffled some flesh about, frowning at the tender wound that pathetic little godling had done to him. The brother was strong, but it was clear more than ever that he was waning. How sad it was to see someone with such a colossal power be reduced to a cripple. The more he gave, the more he was reduced. He and sister would soon be stories that he would tell to mock them. He focused as his flock gathered to the base of the tree, the more ripe of them ready to offer their flesh in their efforts to heal him. Yggdrasil looked down at the dwindling population of the town once called Small Joy, that he renamed to something he found in their collective seeds, a paradise ruled by a singular god, a strong god. His garden would be called Eden. 2 men and 1 woman shuffled forward, their tattered clothes and dirty skin unnoticed by anyone as their flesh shifted and their veins bulged painfully. It was amusing to see them rapture like the little fleshy balloons, his flesh returning to him with the power. He gorged on them and allowed his own flesh to be healed by the effort. He would need to have another rare event where Eden opened its gates for scholars and druids alike to flock to the town to marvel at the world tree. Such people would find their food laced with Yggdrasil, their water tainted with him, the air they breathed infused with him, and they would become him. Still, if Beta did not return, the years of effort he put into making his next vessel optimal would have been wasted, which would be a shame. But Yggdrasil was not one to simply rely on one sad little girl. He always and a backup. He made his large central eye bulge and pop loose from his main body, which looked like a giant cocoon covered in eyes. The main eye slithered down the inside of the tree, coming to a stop at the base, where a shadowy form inside pulsing crystal prison could be seen. "Progress is coming smoothly," Yggdrasil admitted, as the form within was about an average human-sized adult, but their proportions looked slightly off. "To think this is what would happen when so many of the seeds were put in one place." He sighed with a contented noise. To think he had almost killed the head priestess of the world tree when she resisted his influence. How he almost wasted such a strong seed. This new vessel would need a new name. Yggdrasil was this form, but he was always evolving. "Thy name shall be..." He trailed off as the crystal glowed for a moment, revealing a woman with black tree branded on her chest and long pointed ears. But now she was growing a second set of arms and looked to be opening a third eye on her forehead. Zohar. The hero units had split up. 3, including the strength model, had gone the way of the mudroom. 2, one of which was agility model, went through the storeroom, hacking down the door with ease. Delta struggled to both track them and continue her fight in the symbolic space. The Gamma's cast-offs nailed the 2 dungeon cores were adapting to her power, able to weather both her solar system storms of aggressive energy and moving closer. This wasn't like Maharia or even the Spider Queen. This was fighting against corpses who remembered how to fight like her. Pulling back her energy, she narrowed her mana into a symbolic space into thin needles, sending them flying forwards, piercing 2 of them, which caused one in real space to stumble and fall into the mud as its leg locked up. She was distracted for a moment as 2 of the units broke through the secret passage to Maestro's room. "Swa, get Nam and Billy out there. They're coming," she yelled as one of the units launched a disc cutting energy at her. But Foodie intercepted it, and wash of salt and battle cry, there was more noise than sense. An arrow sliced across her arm, missing her by inches, but leaving her with a cut on her skin. The arrow, made of opposing mana, burned, making her gasp as pain flared up her arm. "Biscuits!" she cursed at the attacking unit. She threw mana wave 4, and it washed through Fran's planet, causing a golden echo of her boss to appear, charged one of the black holes, and ran it down with his lance. The damage didn't do much, but they didn't adapt to it on this side. That was weird. "This isn't working. Throwing force at them isn't working," Delta said with a frown. "Salt them! Salt their corpses! Salt their loved ones!" Foodie cried, throwing more mana at them, which didn't amount to much. "Foodie, I would love to, but I don't think salting them is going to." She trailed off as an idea hit her. "This is going to suck," she announced, and began to focus on the robots, creating voids of mana, which was a lot like sucking on a tooth with a wide cavity. Then eating ice cream. It hurt so much to have these bubbles forming, like taking a spoon to her own flesh. But the robots stuttered for a moment, as their performance was halted, forcing them to move much slower. "Call me Bubbles, because you can blow me," she gasped as the hero units had begun to stockpile what energy they had left for moving and attacking. The evolving version had it worse, with the strength model barely moving at all. Delta fell to her knees, and something began popping her head, like a tiny little headache erupting like zits. She focused on starving the invaders. If she could just stall them long enough that Maestro and Bori could do some damage they couldn't evolve from, then it would be a win. She just had to. Suddenly, the pain flared like a solar burst. She just had to hold on. She just had to. A little longer. She pushed against the gates of the dark forces on the other side, threatened to break out. Where was she? Where was Delta? It didn't matter. She pushed against the gate with everything she had. She could just sense how strong the echo was on the other side. The thing being empowered by a second echo and that damn Lish girl. "I will not yield. My world is not yours for the taking. My friends are not your toys to be used. Our memories are not yours to abuse," she screamed and pushed with her rather massive hands on the other door, holding it closed. "Stay away from my..." Family, Delta screamed, standing up, her aura blazing in a symbolic space. The black holes representing the hero units shuddered before Delta rushed forward, sucking all the mana away until it was her pure essence against them. Her skin felt like peeling, her eyes burned like liquid, her voice felt like glass. But she pushed on. 5 highly developed cores strapped with gamma pods, programmed by a douchey organization, against one schoolteacher out of her depth. They should have sent more robots. One of the hero units stared down as his hands melted, because the mushroom grove seemingly caught fire of its own accord, and the large beast in the middle was absorbing the flames to grow stronger. It tried to stand up, but all around it, fuzzy blue creatures rained rocks and spears down on them. Across the floor, 2 of the units struggled to inject as all around them runes glowed with the fiendish power. Reverse Delta, enhanced wire, conjoined Swa, a voice rumbled as he planted his staff in the hallway, preventing them from accessing the room beyond. As each rune was named, they flashed white. Not here, not in my house, Swa snarled at the robots, as he began to grow haggard-looking from the cost of the runes. There was a sound like a beeping, and the hallway exploded. Heat and smoke rolled over Swa as he covered his eyes. Delta's aura flickered, and she stumbled as she pushed 2 of the robots back, forcing them to become void of mana. Vori clawed one of the units, causing parts to fly everywhere, and the glowing core bound in bent metal to roll across the ground. It landed near the strength model unit, who picked up the core as if unable to ignore it. Swa watched as agility model walked out with the smoke, holding the core of the destroyed unit at its side. "Oh, you little rust buckets," he said, as it pressed the core to its chest and sunk into the metal's torso. There was a flash, and Swa closed his eyes. Swa will respawn in 2 hours. Bori will respawn in 5 hours. Delta rolled back, landing in a heap as the surface of her hands burned with a sickly green mana. "Delta," Food said as she struggled to sit up for a moment. Every inch of her in pain, she had to release the void bubbles for the moment, as it felt like she was going to kill her. "Foodie, run! Go back to your dungeon," she told the younger core without hesitation. "No, United Network, Food Network," he protested. Something shot towards Foodie's distracted back, and Delta thrust a hand forward, a dome of orange flickering into existence before it was smashed with more dark green mana. She clutched Foodie close to her, his tiny little white self like a puff of smoke. They rolled hard, and Delta nearly blacked out, but forced herself to get up to one knee. "Their mana burns. It hurts so badly," she whispered, and stood up. "But I won't let them hurt you," she said. Her eyes narrowed as her arms ignited in burning orange mana. The 2 new forms were no longer black holes, but something closer to if a skeleton and a spaceship had been fused together. It moved, but it was unnatural. All around them was a thick green aura that burned all it touched. Their fields didn't overlap because the agility and strength model weren't together in the actual dungeon. But if they met up... But that was when she noticed something. The gamma fragments looked a little malformed now, as if the green mana was warping them as well. They were going to melt their own command system if they kept fusing. They'd be an inert tool of destruction without a driver if all 5 were one. Delta was absolutely sure of it. If there was no consciousness, no gamma fragments left, it was just an object, just a thing. And things were just snacks to Delta. The thing was she could either focus on nullifying their mana absorption or being a fighter that drove them to fuse. She couldn't do both. One of the fuse cores began to fire again, but Delta stood up. She buckled and fell back on her knees in exhaustion. That was when a giant blue hand smashed into it, sending it stumbling away. "Do not touch my dungeon core," Nu said in such a low tone that the dark matter of symbolic space vibrated. The things began to power their mana in the form of a threat, and Nu scoffed. "I will not yield. Our home is not yours for the taking. Our people are not toys for you to play with. Our peace is not something for you to abuse." He snarled and raised his hands, causing extremely detailed mana swords made of blue energy streaking with orange to appear. "I am the mana enchanted notification utility. And I am here to notify you that you are already dead, he said and vanished, taking the fight to the 2 fused cores and a single unfused one. Booty, back him up, Delta ordered and focused on slowly cutting off their mana intake with much more gentle void bubbles. Usually it is divide and conquer, but we hear you, Mother. We shall force these miserable piles of secrets to become one, Maestro warned as the agility unit entered his room, looking like a spider now, with tentacles for legs and heat-proof armor. Target acquired, it intoned, and Maestro rose into the air, the vines connecting to the dungeon, putting him close to the ceiling. The song for this battle, Maestro inquired, then his singular eye blazed red as he faded into the shadows, becoming an undefined mass of vines and noise. A funeral dirge. Farah put down a rag that she was using to clean an already impeccably clean mug. Her pub door was beginning to splinter as something rushed at it. She picked up a bottle off the shelf and poured it into 2 shot glasses. For Yaswa, no one messes with my boys, she said, and downed both of them in a rapid succession. Her nostrils blowing out steam, her door shattered, and she reached under the counter, grabbing the boomstick from its hiding space. As she cocked it, I wonder if you can make a new spirit out of a machine, she asked, voice feral. A large metal hand punched its way through the door's remains, and she fired, sending sparks of flame roaring into existence. The monstrous figure beyond was bulky and tough-looking, but it had oddly placed sections of heat-proof armor that overlapped badly with the protective weave. Farah leapt over the counter, kicking up the table, which flew at the creature hard. She didn't wait for it to hit, as she slammed a bottle of booze into the oddly shaped hole in her weapon, causing the crystal-laden handle to shift from red to green. When she fired next, it was a hurricane of wind that howled and expanded with lingering flames on the machine's body. The hero unit stumbled back 2 steps, and Farah began to scream as she fired again and again. Get out of my pub, she roared. She would either blow this thing to pieces, make sure it learned to fear goblins. The agility hero dodged along the stone pyramid as vines erupted out the ground, breaking stone as all around it. Mushrooms grew with open maws, blasting sonic screams in it. Dance, dance, die, Maestro commanded from above in the air. With music I have wings and power to fly, he intoned as the harsh, drawn-out trumpet slammed into the robot over and over, not having too much effect, it seemed. Maestro soared around the room, pointing his cane at the intruder and causing vines to rush it with crushing intent. How do you think this will end? He called to the soulless thing. He knew there was no point, but the fact that he had no soul didn't negate the fact that Maestro was overflowing with it. He twirled his cane, and the mushroom choir appeared across the wall, shooting balls of mana which crossed the arena, causing only one side of the pyramid to be safe, which the mech barely made it to. It was getting faster. You sprung my trap card, he cried, and the safe side of the pyramid suddenly exploded with dozens of vines. From its back, 2 sharp blades formed, taking up some of the precious armored sections, and it began to cut the vines before they got close. Grow, evolve, become a god, if you desire. I will feast upon your corpse with song and dance all the same, Maestro roared, his eye blazing. You can be a shining star, but I am the abyss that sings. You see me, and the abyss sees you, Maestro warned as he slammed his cane into the wall, causing the entire room to expand, letting the between-floor space become visible. The thrumming orange sea would drive weaker men mad. The mech stared down at the very bottom of the void. A massive dragon on a throne wearing a skull looked up with a dark promise. Dance well, royalty is watching, Maestro announced grandly. He raised his cane, and from his back, vines began to disconnect. These were support vines, the Maestro said calmly, then snapped his glare to the mech as it rushed at him. But not for me. He blurred and slammed his cane into the mech, bashing it hard before kicking it across the space. The floors will have to endure without their star for a time. For the first time since I came on air, Maestro's magnificent show will be taking a short break to deal with some bugs, Maestro said darkly. All around him, the room rotated and spun, pieces of the wall moving in and out of the between with jarring distortions. The music was now echoing and seemingly coming from every inch of the space. "Let's go, dirty brother killer," Maestro intoned, and the two charged at each other. Yatina looked at the orange water with a sigh. She wasn't sure if she could drink it. Something inside her knew that it would be the point of no return if she did. She hesitantly scooped some out of the borrowed goblet and then let her fingers dip into the stuff. It made her skin tingle like a kiss of sunlight. She slowly put the goblet in the well and brought it out near full. Shaking a little, she brought it near her lips, and the smell was like fresh apple pie. The garden felt quiet without the music as Yatina held the goblet a little longer. Lim pushed through the massive feast hall, losing Poppy as she diverted to some library, and Dio easily kept pace with him. Just as he went to open the massive double doors, a brilliant orange light seeped and bled through the gapes in the door, blinding Lim as the floor shook, making him stumble back. Yatina remembered being in a large garden. Then she was somewhere else. Yatina looked around the odd classroom. It looked nothing like any educational place that she had seen before. Everything looked clean and warm, with maps of strange land masses, posters of theoretical science ideas, and even desks with equal standing. The floor was made of a strange smooth substance, and the board at the front wasn't black with chalk, but with white one with ink lines. The sun was setting through the window, and Yatina paused as she see-through ghosts of sorts was sitting at the head desk, marking papers and trying to look upbeat. Only 3 of her seats were filled with students. "They're not coming," the girl said with anger designed to cover a heartache. "Betty, your parents might just have misread the time or got held back in traffic," she soothed, and the girl shook her head. "And I'm the president, Miss D. They're not coming. No one ever comes for me," she snapped and stood to stalk out the room. "She's not wrong. Our parents won't come. My brother is their favorite, and Betty's parents just don't care," one of the boys said with a factual tone that felt extremely familiar. "Adam," the teacher said with a sigh. "My parent is here," someone said with a snort. Yatina turned her head and saw a void in the memory, a void clawing at her skin, eyes, mind, and soul. A maw of teeth and screams. She looked away, her heart beating hard. "I'm your sister, not your mother, and I offered to let you switch classes," Miss D mumbled. "Nah, it's great having at-home help when the homework sucks," the void teased. "Monday, I'll be stuck in some basement working on other kids, and you'll have to handle your own stuff," she warned. "One day," the void snorted. "No, come on, who doesn't have parent issues here?" the last kid asked, and he looked weedy, like he was stuck between growth spurts. He was building some sort of weapon out of connecting pen tips. "Gerald," Miss D began, and the boy looked at her with a suddenly sad expression. "It's just us here, Miss D. Come on," he almost pleaded. "Sorry. I was doing my best to think of your given name in case your father showed up," Miss D said with an apologetic tone. "Gemma, don't you dare hit Adam with the pen sword," she said, and the boy grinned, looking pleased as he undid his hair from a tight ponytail. "But he's so fun. He just shuts down and takes it," the boy known as Gemma said with a smile as he poked Adam, who looked stone-faced. Yatina was drawn into the scene because it was something she had always wanted for herself. A place where her oddness might have been accepted by someone other than her sister. She looked down and found herself shrunken, as if she was young teen once more. The teacher looked at her, features almost unseeable. Yatina, come join us. We'd be happy to have you," she said brightly, and one of the desks lit up. It had her name on it. Yatina reached for it. The wooden chair was warm. It felt like home. "Yatina," Lim said in a panic as his captain laid on the ground, foaming orange-looking bubbles out of her mouth. "Hey, it's fine. I also drank it," Dio assured him, as Yatina's body twitched and seemed to be feeding weirdly mana-potent when a fake eye suddenly glowed orange and shifted to a deep hue. The eye was engraved with the odd triangle on the dungeon's entrance. Yatina started and stared up at the ceiling as the whole dungeon seemed to shake violently. "Captain," Lim said, sweating as the mana was starting to get to him. She turned to him, orange foam still on her chin, with a wild look in her armor eye. she said with a raspy tone. Wayfare? He echoed. Global, planetary-wide communication signals, around world, she said, grabbing his arms. Oh, what are those? Lim said in a panic as Dio smiled at their friendship. Cat pictures. There was a slight pause before she got an even crazier glint in eye. And degeneracy, so much degeneracy, she hissed. Lim was too confused to argue, and he nearly screamed when a kobold appeared out of some bushes. Did someone say degeneracy? All hail the mighty Pip, he said seriously. The dungeon shook again, and the kobold shook his head. No time to waste. We need to sneak you all out of Quee's tunnel ASAP, he said, and Yatina looked skywards. Bands of mana weaving. The floors are connected, but spaced apart and tiny space contained far away. Relative in dimensions, she muttered, her eye glowing. A mushroom that appeared over despair, growing light corpses come plucking at her heartstrings. Yatina mumbled and then promptly passed out as her body trembled and shuddered. I like her poetry, Dio offered. Lim felt he needed a stiff juice box. End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Vitmori, Terran on Air, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Red Panda 121, Leslie 517, Bushmaster 177, Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Lightsjock, Dragzoon WRE, Lord Azrakal, and Arcadian. Thank you.